One of our favorites, Brody Miller, who covers the Tigers over at the Athletic. Remember, if you are looking for LSU information, if you're looking for news, get yourself a subscription over at the Athletic. You get insiders like Brody Miller that will be following LSU and give you great stories like some that we will touch on today, including potential replacements for Dare Rosenthal now that it's official that Rosenthal has transferred out of LSU and will be taking his next semester of classes over at the University of Kentucky, where LSU makes an October trip on their schedule. We welcome in Brody Miller to the conversation here. Good morning, man. How are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
Doing good. Let's start there with the Rosenthal news. Obviously, this is news that people have been aware about over a couple of weeks here. But now that it is official of him moving on and getting to Kentucky, Coach Orgeron has spoke publicly a couple of times about this, and it does seem like Cam Wire is up next. What does this mean for the left tackle spot and the overall depth on the offensive line with the news of Rosenthal moving on?
Yeah, it's funny because my views on the overall starting offensive line don't drastically shift. You know what I mean? Where, yeah, Dare Rosenthal is probably more talented in a vacuum than Cam Wire and things like that, and we all know his upside. But in reality, I mean, Cam Wire actually started more games in 2020 than Dare Rosenthal did, so it's not like they're missing that part. You know, if you want to get into the some like the analytics stuff on offensive linemen, which I'm always skeptical of with offensive linemen, but still, like, their performances in terms of, like, missed run block percentage, stuff like that, pretty marginal. And Wire's a better run blocker, Rosenthal's better pass blocker, but it's kind of marginal, which is all to say, I feel like the starting offensive line has plenty of experience, all that. I don't think it's going to be a huge hit. I think the big thing, which obviously you're alluding to as well, I think, is the depth was already, I think, something that you and I talk about on the show all the time, that they probably going into this summer had, two backups they really trusted, right? Maybe one even. Now, after Wire becomes a starter, there's one, if any. You know, Anthony Bradford's the guy who's really come along, and they love his talent. Charles Turner at least, rotated in some, but I don't know if there's, a firm trust level there. And yes, they were pretty pleased with Garrett Dellinger, true freshman Garrett Dellinger, tackle this spring, so that's a positive, but still, true freshman playing offensive line. So it's a really tough spot of just, it's offensive line. Multiple guys go down all the time. So now it's just kind of scary of, if more than one guy goes down, what are LSU's options? And I think Ed Orgeron has said it himself. He's like, I don't know who the second tackle is right now. So I think they have some concerns there, but if you want to be optimistic, I think the starting line will be fine.
What do you make on Cam Wire and the opportunity that he has in front of him?
It's funny because Rosenthal and Wire were kind of paired together from the second they kind of both started playing tackle at LSU as freshmen. They were both 6'6" and 6'7" tackles who were pretty athletic and all this upside, but both really needed red shirts and were raw and all that. They were always paired together, and Rosenthal clearly kind of gained stock earlier and was more impressive and all those things. And yeah, I think if you ask me just to say Rosenthal's better, yeah, but I think there's still some of that same upside with Cam Wire. I still think he's a guy who's going to have a good LSU career, and he's got a few years left of eligibility. So in some ways, it's big for him to now be able to maybe be a guy for the next 2 years even. So, yeah, I don't know if Cam Wire is going to be, a star that we thought Dare Rosenthal would be, but I think Cam Wire has plenty of talent, and it's definitely I think he's going to be fine. Let's put it that way.
I think that Orgeron officially made a comment this morning during his regular weekly radio appearance where he's taken, it looks like Austin Deculus and Derek Stingley Jr. over to Hoover next week. I think that's official with those two guys. I don't know if a third name has surfaced. If not, I'd say Cade York, but do you have anybody that you believe he'll be taking there as that third head?
Cade York would be a fantastic pick. And yeah, it's just my vibe, and this is me speculating. I got the sense maybe because of COVID and whatnot, teams are sticking to two, or I don't know, though. That's a good question. But Cade York's a good one. This one's tricky because I don't think they know I don't know if he's going to start at all, but Jamone Clark definitely is on that list of guys they think highly of and would definitely trust in that setting. So Cade York, though, I think that would be the best pick, yeah.
Orgeron in another radio appearance last week gave a little insight to the quarterback, where he was stated and quoted in saying that the locker room knows who the better player is. What did you make of that comment? And I guess to get back to the conversation that we have tapped into now numerous times in the quarterback spot, How do you feel about it here in mid-July going into fall camp here in about 6 weeks?
So I've tried listening to that clip on WWL like 4 times now, just to like make sure I'm getting the tone, because there's a chance he's just saying like, hey, we'll know. Like, with the locker room, you always know. Like, maybe that's all he's saying. Because I don't want to put words in his mouth, but the first 2 times I heard it, I definitely took it as we know. And again, who knows? But you and I have been pretty consistent on this show saying if that is the case, if they are saying they know, that even more makes me think that, in that scenario, that it's Max Johnson, just because of things we heard from spring, things we heard just throughout the program, that it seems like it will be Johnson. But, and I've said before, but then I talk to other people who really think, Miles Brennan is firmly there, and the staff and Ogeron are telling Brennan and his camp that that they are still 100% possibly the guy and all that. So, and obviously there's so much politicking that goes on with this that you enter the I don't know what to believe zone, and I think sometimes that's maybe the healthier way to go about it. But yeah, to go back to that quote, I did kind of take it as, hey, maybe he's saying the locker room knows Johnson, and I hate to overread on some of this stuff too, but if you just kind of go on like Instagram, if you do your social media sleuthing and you just kind of see like how the other players are posting about Max Johnson, or how they're all like hanging out all the time on Instagram stories and stuff like that, there does seem to be like the way like a Kayshon Boutte or someone like that is posting about Max Johnson. It just kind of makes you think like, I think they think he's the guy, but again, that's just Brody speculating, so let's not aggregate that to anybody.
Sure. But no, in following your line of investigating, which I have taken really that tactic. Yeah, I've taken that tactic a couple of times. It is easy to feel that way. You get the feeling and the sense of, especially if a quote like that is out there, where the players know and the locker room knows, well, if you're looking at their actions, it does look like 14. So Brody Miller here with us. A couple of new names that from last season that I've been asked about, that I know that you've been asked about. You do a great mailbag segment over at The Athletic, and another reason why you should be subscribed over there and following LSU football news, so you can keep up with Brody and you can ask him questions that he will answer. And I know you were asked about Jordan Tolles and Philip Webb, 2 names that really popped out of recent recruiting classes that not necessarily have been on the field as much. Now they are at positions that are pretty crowded. What do you see on Philip Webb taking that next step, and then Jordan Tolles probably has a better opportunity just with the uncertainty at safety?
Yeah, I made sure to, and you said this too, I made sure to kind of lead with my tailback saying, I think the way we need to judge the sophomore class to some extent with some of these guys is realizing everyone's back, or even the spots that everyone's back, they're bringing like 2 transfers in. So keep a little bit of like, just because hypothetically, let's use Jordan Tolles, just because he doesn't earn a starting spot hypothetically, it doesn't mean he's like not on good pace or something like that. But anyway, yeah, I think Philip Webb, to me, and I'm curious if you've heard otherwise, because I know you're obviously very plugged in. He falls for me from what I've just gathered in camp of, he's in good shape. They think he's got a ton of potential, all those things, but he's just not quite there yet to be like a guy, and they're obviously loaded in some of these spots. So I think they still think he's going to be a contributor at LSU eventually. I just don't think he's like ready to rotate in. What about you?
No, I've heard the same thing. He was a guy that I think when you look at him physically, everybody is just kind of waiting on the day to where it all just kind of makes sense to put him out there. But I think more than anything, it's the guys that are playing in front of him. I think that he's at a jam-packed position where not only do they have proven guys there, but guys coming in, guys like Savion Jones, who I've heard really good things about, are making a push at his position as well.
And yeah, absolutely. And then with Tolles, I think he's just one of my favorites to follow, because I was really, really high on him coming in, and I still am. But I just think he had a really weird freshman year, and he probably falls in those category of people who 2020 was just not kind to for a bunch of reasons. And then I heard a lot of different things that him and Bill Bush didn't really click or connect or whatever you want to call it throughout that year. And then he did get some chances to play and look pretty solid, but I just don't know if him not playing 2020 is a true indicator of where he really stands, but it's going to be really tough this year because Jay Ward's locked down one of those spots. Todd Harris is obviously the veteran, so Ty probably goes to Todd Harris, but you got those 2 true freshmen coming in, and Sage Ryan and Derek Davis, where I mean, Jordan Tolles, I don't know, maybe if things go differently, he could start this year, and he still could. He's talented as anybody, but I just don't know if he's my pick there, but I still really like his talent.
Do you think it's a bounce-back season for Cordell Foltz? I was very high on him after the Alabama game, and it just seemed like last year we just never put him in a spot to succeed. And just doing like the social media following, as you said with Max Johnson, the defensive back players click with Cordell Foltz. They love him. He thinks he's a dog. I mean, he's got the potential.
I agree in a lot of ways, and I think, I remember I did that story a while back on Jay Ward, and I talked to so many people in the program who talked about Jay Ward, and I say this to say this was alluding to a lot of how the corners looked at times. Jay Ward, honestly, I'm struggling. Consistently looked like the bad guy on a coverage bus or stuff like that because of issues with the safeties or issues with playing the scheme that just always made it look like the corner was getting whooped when sometimes it just wasn't the case. And that was mainly focused on Ward, but I think it was true of Foltz too. And I don't think Foltz had a great year, so I don't want to sit there and say the scheme screwed him or something. But I do think, there's a way the other corners talk about him. I always go back to that fascinating line Dave Aranda told the broadcasters back in 2019 when they had Fulton, Stingley, all these guys. He's like, hey, if you ask me who our best coverage corner is right now, I think it's Cordell Foltz. And that was 2 years ago. But I think they do think he's that kind of talent. They think he's that kind of coverage guy. And he does seem completely locked into having that starting nickel spot. So, I don't know if I have this. I always view Foltz as a guy. I don't know if I have him in an upside category like they do some other guys where he could become some all-SEC guy. I never see him as that, but I see him as a really trustworthy coverage corner. So I do think he will have a bounce back year in a better system and put in a better situation.
Brody Miller joining us here from The Athletic. Remember, you can follow him on Twitter, and you can catch him here routinely on the Jordy Culotta Show. He's got a great podcast that you can check out as well. He's on Twitter at Brody A. Miller. Brody, I know that we have talked about this both on the air and off the air in LSU's drug policy. And it looks as if they were burned, no pun intended, again by it with Dare Rosenthal. Shortly after that, Sadiq Charles put out a tweet, and on the tweet he said, "Since nobody wants to say it, I will. If you smoke weed, don't go to LSU. It'll be blown out of proportion and used against you compared to how a lot of other programs handle that." What did you make of that tweet? And I know we don't want to get into policy because the policy has been enacted and been there for over a decade. Like I said in reacting to the Dare Rosenthal news, this is the same policy that threw Tyrann Mathieu out of school. So nobody really that follows the program and supports the program can really be surprised at where they are. But what did you see from that tweet when you saw Charles put that out there?
I almost want to start with the reaction to it because there was this portion of the reaction to it that was like, why are you bringing attention to this problem? And I say this isn't news to anyone in the college football world. This isn't him letting recruits know this. Other teams are telling, it's been a problem at LSU for years, and they talk about it off the record to people that other teams are already recruiting against LSU because of this policy. That is already a thing in motion. So this isn't news that tweet isn't going to hurt anything, I don't think, anymore than it already is happening. That, LSU has a drug policy. Like you said, goes back to Tyrann Mathieu getting kicked out of school and so many LSU players in recent years, from Michael Divinity to Sadiq Charles having consistent suspension issues. And this is not my opinion. Like we said, this is not my opinion on saying whether or not, these guys were breaking rules all the time. So there's different debates you can have there, but still there's just a not documented because it's very sketchy, but well-known thing that LSU kind of is more strict about this and actually punishes players for it more than a lot of other places. And that is a well-known thing. And I think it's something that LSU has wrestled with in recruiting that, offensive tackles, or for example, their teams recruiting against them saying, hey, look what happened to Sadiq Charles and Dare Rosenthal, as talented as they are. Don't send your tackle kid there. So it's a problem that LSU wants. Probably, a lot of people there probably want dressed as well. So it's a really tricky situation there.
Look, I know that is a minefield in trying to navigate as far as answering a question along that, but when you see somebody like Charles putting that out there, and we reacted to it here on this platform, just saying that LSU has to, they can't be, there's no way that they can be surprised in the reaction that they're seeing from the public. But now when you see part of the alumni saying it publicly, it really has to start hit home, because you're right. I mean, the amount that they are undercut in recruiting, both in the living room and through messaging on this, is daily. I mean, it's routine in the way that schools recruit against LSU with this policy. Another policy that's going into action is NIL, and it looks like some schools are really trying to get out in front of this, most notably Texas, and it looks like they have made a mark on Arch Manning with what it could look like with NIL stuff paired along what it could be on the field with Steve Sarkisian calling plays. Have you heard anything jump off in the first week and a half here now that NIL is in play with college football? Any stories that pop to you?
I'm going to be honest, and then I'm sorry I'm a bad guess. I don't have anything quite like that, just because, I'm not unfamiliar with the Arch Manning Texas situation, but I haven't heard anything crazy like that. And my thing with this whole, I think it's going to be a huge recruiting tool. I think being able to prove that you can help players get good deals is obviously going to be a big thing. But in terms of the story, it was a massive, massive story for the first week. But I really think in the grand scheme, it's going to be something that kind of goes away eventually in terms of how much it's in our face. I think it's something that, I can tell you, I don't think readers care that much. You know what I mean? And I think at the end of the day, how often are we really tracking, the shoe deal that an NBA player gets, all the time, or things like that. So that's my grumpy answer, but I think it's something that is a huge deal for the rights of players and things like that. But I also think it's something that eventually will kind of go away as a thing we talk about all the time.
Brody, as we said, there is a great write-up on the Athletic that you have authored about Cam Wire. What do you have in the works? What are you working on here with SEC Media Days on the horizon?
Yeah, I think there's going to be, I think we both know there's going to be a lot on the quarterback battle and things like that, and a lot going on. The Manning Passing Academy is also this weekend, so there's going to be a piece on just kind of what it's like to be a quarterback in 2021, where you guys are all competing with each other and then replacing each other in transfers and all that kind of stuff. But also there's going to be something to watch out for either tomorrow or Thursday on. LSU did a very large racial climate survey after George Floyd, and basically poured a ton of resources into diversity and inclusion, and you can see it in the football staff and throughout. So I have a story kind of looking at the past year as LSU is trying to reckon with some of these racial issues in the university. So look to that. Looking forward to catching up in Birmingham on Monday, man. Have a safe travel over, and we'll see you there. Thanks for the time this morning. Drink on me, man. Take care. Absolutely. There he is, Brody Miller checking in.